Welcome to Beginnings Part 4. I don't know if you recall or had the chance to watch, but Beginnings Part 3, we talked about Genesis chapter 3 in some detail. But, of course, the song I used for that was Satan's song, the Song of Temptation. And today, I'd like to play as kind of an end of that and a moving along into the rest of Genesis. I'd like to play a song I called Where Are You? And it's God coming down into the garden and singing this song to Adam and Eve. And it contains parts of what we call the first promise. And it contains parts a little bit beyond the first promise as well. But this is the way it goes. Adam, where are you? Eve, why can't you come and walk with me in the garden now? I gave you the freedom to walk with me or walk away. You chose today to walk away. Now begins the toil and pain. You shall return to dust, for it is dust from which you came. Creation now is shattered, intended to love and live. They chose to give their lives away for lies today. The tempter's lies have brought death's reign. My word stands firm, it's true, but firmer still, my love remains. For I will not forsake them. My love for them is strong. Death's power, it will not last long. I'll right this wrong. Death's reign will one day be undone. The sacrifice I make will be the word, my only song. Adam, where are you? Eve, why can't you come and walk with me in the garden now? Well, thank you for listening to that. Sometimes I picture that, well, I think we know that God was not happy. God gave them freedom to walk with him or to walk away. They chose to walk their own way. They chose to follow the lies of the tempter. And so sin, death, and the power of the devil came into the world. But this song goes a little bit further. It doesn't give us just that hazy promise. It has God saying that the sacrifice that he will make will be the Word made flesh. That's what we call Jesus, the Word made flesh, who came to our earth, if you will, on a great secret mission. And that mission was to work the salvation of the whole world. There are so many amazing things in Scripture, but this is one of those things. And of course, it's just hinted at in Genesis chapter 3. But today I wanted to just show you how wrong things went, because that was part of the reason for me doing Beginnings. In the world, in the beginning, God created the world. Everything was good. Everything was good. And things quickly degenerated. And if you take a look at Genesis chapters 1 through 11, a lot of scholars look at that and they call that sometimes the prehistory of the people of God. And what they mean by that is basically it's made up of 4 accounts. Depending on how you count them, you could perhaps say 5, but they talk about the creation and everything being good. They talk about Adam and Eve in the garden. And then they go on from there and they talk about the temptation and how things went wrong. And they talk about relationships. They talk about how relationships went bad real fast. And if you think about it, and this is not to my credit, a Lutheran pastor and a man I consider a great Bible scholar, Harry Wendt, he taught this in his classes a long time ago. And he taught that, that first relationship that was broken, of course, was between God and the human beings. And then with ever rippling effects, spreading rippling effects, things get worse and worse. So what's the next relationship that is broken? Well, the next relationship, perhaps one of the closest in all of life, and that's the relationship between man and woman, between husband and wife. And that relationship is broken. With Adam blaming Eve and Eve blaming the serpent. And then the Bible goes on. And as soon as you get into Genesis chapter 4, things kind of fast forward a little bit. I don't know if you remember what the next story is, but the next story is Cain and Abel, Genesis chapter 4. Cain and Abel are brothers, children of Adam and Eve. And it goes on to tell the story of how Cain becomes jealous of Abel. And then it's brother against brother as Cain kills Abel out of his jealous rage. There's another little interesting aside that takes place there because once again, God confronts Cain just as he confronted Adam and Eve. And God says, you've killed your brother. His blood is crying out to me from the ground. How could you do such a thing? I'm casting you out from being with the rest of humanity. And Cain says to God, I can't bear this. People will kill me. And so there's this thing that they call the Mark of Cain. And a lot of people sometimes see it as a punishment, but really, it's really a blessing and a mercy from God. Because what God says to Cain, when Cain says, everybody will kill me, God says, I will put a mark on you, the mark of Cain, and no one will take your life. For they know that if they do, their punishment will be 7 times greater. And so, anyway, things just start going. And then from that story, we get this incredible account in Genesis chapter 6, and things have really gone wrong. Sit down with chapter 6 sometimes and read it. It's the beginning of the story about Noah. And it goes on there, and it tells us that there was not a person that could be found on the face of the earth whose heart was not just given over to evil things. Everyone was just going about doing evil. Things just had gotten so bad. Things that people had lost sight of the relationship that they had once been able to have with God. And evil just was all over the world, except for one man and his family, and that was Noah. And so God says to Noah, build an ark, Noah, because you know what? Things are so bad. I'm going to destroy this world and start all over again. And I'll start with your family, Noah. And so that happens, and there's the great flood, and God saves all of the animals, and God saves Noah and his family, or God saves many of the animals, enough so that they can repopulate the earth. And then Noah repopulates the earth with his family, and then there are generations that come down from Noah. And then the people are once again getting rather strong, getting rather large. And they decide that what they're going to do is they're going to make a name for themselves, a name that will reach up into the heavens so that they can be like God. And God looks and sees that the people, yet again, are not doing the right thing, but they're just making themselves gods. They're making themselves gods. And they're building themselves this great tower. People say it different ways. Some people say they were building the Tower of Babel, or some people say they were building the Tower of Babel. Because as they were building this great tower to the sky, God said, I am going to mix up the languages of all of these people so that they are no longer able to communicate with each other. And so that they'll just have to spread out because they just become too evil-minded when they're all together. And that takes us to the end of Genesis chapter 11, where all of this has just gone wrong. And there is so much evil. And then, in chapter 12, an interesting thing happens. And when we get to beginnings next week, we'll talk a little bit about chapter 12 and the call of a man. At first he's named Abram, and he will become named Abraham. Thanks for being with us. I'll see you next week, where we'll be finishing up the book of Genesis and beginnings. Good day.